What's up, design family, and welcome to another episode of FittDesign TV. On today's episode, we'll be looking at two very commonly used terms in the textile space, specifically within the sportswear industry. The two terms are nylon and polyamide. If you guys have ever noticed, these two terms are used quite interchangeably. Why is that? Watch this video and you're going to find out. Hey guys, and welcome to FittDesign TV. So glad to have you here. On this channel, we discuss all things sports fashion, graphic design, manufacturing, and technology. We'll discuss key topics, answer pressing questions, and provide actionable steps on starting your own product line. If you're interested in any of the above topics, stick around. You're in for a good one. Before we understand what the main difference is, it's important to unpack the concept of polyamide. That may be a term that you guys are familiar with, and if you're not, know that it's a chemical descriptor. It's a descriptor for a range of polymers containing either peptide or amide units in a repeating fashion. So polyamide is a chemical descriptor. It's a very wide range of different types of matter. It can range from anything from proteins to the fibers that we see in our clothing. Understand that polyamide is a very wide range of types of materials. When it comes to nylon, and when it comes specifically to the textile industry, why do we see polyamide, which is a very wide descriptor, being used so specifically? That's because of nylon, actually. Nylon is, as we all know, synthetic silk. It was designed in the 1930s by a company called DuPont on the heels of the First World War. After the First World War, there was an abundance of recycled parachutes, and there was a shortage of the fabrics needed to create common garments, like silk, wool, so on and so forth. So there was a pressure on scientists to create synthetic versions of these types of fibers. What they came up with is nylon. Nylon, at its core, is a polyamide. We have to understand that polyamide, again, is a chemical descriptor. It describes the way that molecules are put together in a repeating peptide or amide fashion. And nylon is just that. It's actually based on repeating units of dicarboxylic acid and another type of carbon-based compound called diamine. These are arranged in repeating patterns to create what is known as nylon. Nylon is used in a wide variety of different garment applications because of its elasticity and because of its silky smoothness. However, after the First World War, as it became more and more appropriated into the garment industry, we noticed that with the same thing with polyamide fabrics, nylon's lack of heat resistance and its overall lack of breathability led to it not being necessarily the best use in its true nature in garments. So what ended up happening is those fibers, nylon fibers or these polyamide fibers, began being mixed with different types of other fibers like cotton, wool, spandex to mix and match the best characteristics of both types of fibers when they used to be mixed. So what ended up happening is nylon became appropriated in the textile industry and it became the de facto polyamide type of fabric. So when we used to think of polyamide fibers, we think of nylon. However, there are a lot of different types of polyamide fibers that can be used in the garment industry. If you think of polyamide, again, try to understand that it's just a descriptor for the way that molecules are arranged to create the overall construction of this type of matter. Wool and silk are actually also polyamide molecules. They're based on repeating units of either amides or peptides. So why are those not called polyamide? That's because we haven't appropriated their names as polyamides. We just call them as wool and silk. Because nylon is the most common type of polyamide, we call that nylon. However, if we also want to refer to nylon in another way, people usually refer to nylon as polyamide, but people do not refer to silk or wool as polyamide, even though they actually are polyamide. So it's one of those weird things that we as a society over time have appropriated this name and ended up calling nylon polyamide and polyamide nylon. The same way that you have tissue papers. Tissue is a more wide variety. It's a family of this type of paper, and we call a lot of tissue papers, no matter what they are, Kleenex. It's a brand name for tissue paper. So that's the easiest way for me to kind of relate the two. When you see a pair of leggings made out of polyamide fabric, know that that's essentially just another name for nylon. Nylon is a polyamide. To get back to the idea of polyamides in textiles, not to confuse you guys too much, but silk and wool are actually organic polyamides. They're organic polyamides because they're found in nature, right? We can source wool and we can source silk from natural resources. However, nylon is a synthetic polyamide, so that's where the main difference is. The main type of synthetic polyamide we use is nylon. So that's why when we think of polyamides, we think synthetic. However, that's not necessarily true because we do find naturally occurring polyamides like wool and like silk. There are also other types of polyamides that are used in the clothing space, or more so in the textile space, like aramids. An aramid fabric is based on a polyamide construction. However, it's not a popular textile due to its very specific nature and use. Where is aramid fabric used? It's used in firefighting suits, and it's also used in Kevlar vests because of that specific type of molecule's rigidity and its fire retardedness. However, you don't see these same fabrics being used in the overall main textile space, especially in the sportswear industry. So again, to go back to it, polyamide equals nylon only when discussing in the context of garment or fashion space. Hopefully that's not too confusing, and hopefully you guys feel like you have a better grasp on nylon versus polyamide. Know that when you're discussing this with another fashion designer or someone within the manufacturing space, people are going to generally understand polyamide as nylon. They're not going to get into the specifics of, oh, that's a polyamide, it must be based on repeating molecules, because that can be a descriptor for pretty much anything. Polyamide equals nylon. I like to use nylon just to be safe, because polyamide can sometimes be an ambiguous term, as we've come to see. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you have a better understanding of these two terms. If you guys want us to do similar videos in the future, please feel free to leave what two things you want us to compare. We always enjoy putting out these videos for you guys and hearing from everyone. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to FittDesign TV. Until next time, stay awesome.